Welcome back to our lecture on effective data collection. In previous videos, we've introduced the basics of intervention monitoring. We've looked at results chains and how you can improve them to develop indicators and measurement methods. And for some indicators, this is all you need. For example, if the measurement method is to get data from your partner, you just need to make sure that it's included in the relevant reporting templates, or you can ask your partner about it when you next meet them. But for other indicators, there's a lot more to it than that. And this is particularly true for indicators where you need data from beneficiaries, such as farmers or other market actors who you're not directly partnering with. So in this video, we're going to look at what you actually do when you go to the field. How do you collect data in a structured and effective way? So when it comes to data collection, I think there's an important balance to be struck. On one hand, there's no point in doing terrible measurement. What do we mean by this? It means that you take samples that are unrepresentative of your population or that are heavily biased. It might mean that you rely on just a single source of data and you don't look to triangulate it. Maybe you bias your data collection, perhaps by not training your data collectors properly, or you analyze it too slowly to be useful. This all means that you're wasting money. You're not really learning from the data collection that you're doing. On the other hand, you don't want to be doing too much measurement either. If you find yourself spending too much money, too much time, or using methods that interfere with implementation, such as some experimental kind of research designs, this can also be detrimental to the program. So you need to find the right balance. The DCED Standard doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to come up with a plausible story, backed up by data, that would convince a reasonable but skeptical observer of the effectiveness of your intervention. And the DCED also doesn't specify exactly what methods you need to use, but there are 3 principles to bear in mind, and we're going to go through them now. The first principle is triangulation. And this means that you don't just rely on a single method or set of data, but that you keep trying to find multiple sources of information that support your finding. A good way to think about triangulation is through this old story about a group of people who find an elephant as they're walking along. Each person looks closely at the bit of the elephant nearest to them and tries to say what they think it is. One person sees a tusk and thinks it's a spear. Another thinks the trunk is a snake. But actually working out what they're looking at requires information from all of these sources, not just one alone. The second point is about mixed methods. And here we mean that you can't just use qualitative methods, and you can't just use quantitative methods. You need to use both of them. And a nice metaphor here is that research methods are like a fruit salad. You can always have one by itself, but a mix of them together is better. And the reason is that qualitative methods fill in a gap that quantitative methods don't show you. Qualitative methods can show you how and why change is happening. But it's not enough to get qualitative feedback. You also need to know the magnitude of a change, how much change has happened, how much revenue or profit has been achieved. Using them together should tell you the whole story. And finally, you need to take an investigative approach. The results chain sets out what you expect to achieve, but we all know this isn't necessarily what will happen. So you need to be constantly on the alert for unexpected findings that don't fit into your original framework, or for unexpected sources of evidence like a casual conversation in the market. So you need to be a bit like a detective. You need to go out and look for evidence. So this toolkit includes a research plan template, and this is a quick and simple Excel template that can be completed before you do any data collection. The aim is to provide a template that asks some of the key questions, to prompt your team to think through some of the critical issues before you do any research. It also allows your data collection to be reviewed internally, for example by your management, or externally if you get an audit for your use of a DCED standard. And you'll be able to download the blank and completed Excel template on the website. It's in Microsoft Excel format. So first, we have some basic questions about the research. Who is doing it? When? Where? What's the basic purpose, to summarize it in a sentence? Next, what are the key research questions? And here you should list out the key research questions you want answers to. For example, this might be, how profitable is the new business model? How much has yield increased? What farmer feedback is there on working with the business? It's good to keep this limited. There's space for all 6 questions, but you don't need to ask that many. Next, we get into some of the details of the research. This table asks you about your sample, who exactly is going to be part of the research. It asks you to say who the respondents are, why you're talking to them, and how many you speak to. There's also space to say what research tool you're using. And it's important to note that this template isn't a substitute for an actual questionnaire. You'll still need to design a survey instrument or a focus group discussion guide and pre-test it before you actually do the interviews. But on this form, at least you need to say if you have developed this or not. What tool are you using? Next is attribution strategy. We briefly spoke about attribution in the previous lecture on measurement plans. But now you come to do your research, here's the time to give more detail and say exactly how you're going to assess attribution. I'm not going to talk you through the different attribution methods, but if you are wondering about them, check out some of the fantastic guidance we have available on our website. And in particular, in the guidelines to attribution, which is linked below this video, it has a great flowchart, pictured here on the screen, which will talk you through a number of the key decisions you need to make. And it will explain how the different factors of your intervention will influence the attribution method you need to select, as well as explaining how to do it. So I strongly recommend you go and read that guidance. And finally, this form asks about ethical considerations. So this might be particularly relevant if you're asking sensitive questions. For example, in a previous job, we had a major ethical challenge when asking about incomes, because the government was also very interested in this data, meaning that farmers wouldn't want to give us their income data, and local governments would expect us to tell them whatever we found in our research. So any issue around confidentiality, sensitive questions, consent, you can outline here. So that's the end of this video. We've talked about the importance of planning your data collection, and we've introduced a template you can use in your work. As always, you can download a completed version of the template, a blank version, and you can access more guidance here on our website.